when a luxury car broke down on a forgotten stretch of downtown road. It wasn't a tow truck or a mechanic who came to the rescue. It was Lena, a homeless girl with calloused hands and a sharp mind, who changed everything with a single act of kindness. What started as a moment of grit in the gutter soon unraveled into a high-stakes journey of power, trust, and redemption between two people from opposite worlds. This is the story of how one fix sparked a revolution, and how love, real, raw, and unexpected, found its way through concrete streets and glass towers. The road cut through the countryside like a scar, empty and slick beneath the pounding rain. The only sounds were the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers and the low hum of Ethan Cole's electric car, now sputtering as he gripped the wheel tighter. The digital dashboard blinked red warnings as the vehicle coasted to a crawl. A moment later, the engine died completely. He cursed under his breath and coasted the car to the shoulder, pulling it into the gravel with a quiet hiss. "Great," he muttered, stabbing at the unresponsive screen. The system flickered once, then died. No power, no lights, no signal. He reached for his phone. Dead too. Figures. Ethan Cole, 30 years old, billionaire tech entrepreneur, media darling, and freshly humiliated by his own board of directors, was stranded in the middle of nowhere. He leaned back against the seat and exhaled through his nose. Earlier that day, he'd pitched his most ambitious idea yet, a humanitarian AI system designed to track and assist homeless populations using data clusters and outreach drones. The board had rejected it flat. No profitability, no scalability, just idealism. He'd walked out furious, his voice still echoing in that polished glass conference room. Now he sat, soaked in irony and rain. With no clue how to fix the car he had spent a fortune customizing. He opened the door and stepped out into the storm. Rain hit him like needles, sharp and relentless. He popped the hood and stared at the tangle of cables and components. He knew code, algorithms, how to build a neural net from scratch, but under the hood, this might as well have been a spaceship. He didn't even know where to start. Then, out of the darkness, a voice called out behind him. "Having some trouble, rich boy?" Ethan spun, startled. Emerging from the trees was a girl no older than 20, drenched to the bone, with a battered backpack slung over one shoulder. Her clothes were threadbare and soaked, her boots mismatched. Mud streaked her jeans. "What did you just call me?" he asked, defensive. "Just calling it like I see it," she said, stepping closer. "Nice car, expensive coat, helpless expression, screams privilege." Ethan looked her over, uncertain. "What are you doing out here?" "Living," she said simply. "This forest is home. Yours seems to be malfunctioning." He hesitated. "Look, I don't have time for this." "Clearly," she said, peering under the hood. "Cortex Gen 4. You flooded your battery regulator. Rain must have shorted something after you hit that pothole." "You know cars?" he asked, surprised. "I know survival," she said. "You need a manual bypass on the drive controller." Ethan blinked. "You're serious?" "Deadly." She pulled a cracked multi-tool from her coat. "Unless you prefer to stand here looking pretty while I fix it." He didn't answer. She was already rolling up her sleeves. He handed her the toolkit from the trunk and watched as she worked. Her fingers were quick, practiced. She used a scrap of foil from a protein bar wrapper in her pack to bridge a corroded circuit. When she popped the panel back into place, she said, "Try it now." Ethan climbed into the driver's seat and pressed the ignition. The car whirred to life, dashboard lights flickering back online. He stared at her through the rain-streaked window, stunned. She had done it. She stepped back, arms crossed. "Told you." He got out. "What's your name?" "Lena," she said. "You're welcome, by the way." "Ethan," he replied. "And yeah, thank you." He pulled out his wallet. "Let me pay you." She shook her head. "Don't insult me." "It's not an insult," he said. "You helped me. You deserve something for that." "What I deserve is not something you can pull out of a wallet," she snapped. "I'm not a cause. I'm not a charity. I'm just someone who knows what she's doing." Ethan was taken aback. "Okay, sorry." She softened just slightly. "I could use a ride." "You're headed to the city?" "Yeah, I can take you wherever you need to go." "There's a diner on 5th, she said. "Been a day and a half since I ate anything that wasn't out of a dumpster." "Done," he said. They climbed into the car, silent. The heat kicked in, and Lena's face relaxed as warmth seeped through her soaked clothes. Ethan glanced at her. Dirt streaked her cheeks. Her eyes were sharp and alive, despite the exhaustion in them. She caught him looking. "You always stare at people who save your life." "Only the interesting ones," he said. She smirked. "You're not what I expected either. Thought you'd be more clueless." "Thanks." "You pitched that homeless AI thing, didn't you?" she asked. "What?" His head whipped around. "How do you?" "I read," she said. "Libraries. Coffee shops. You're all over the news." He blinked. "You think it's a bad idea?" "No. I think it's a great idea. But they won't fund it because you're trying to fix something they profit from staying broken." Her voice was calm, unflinching. "They want you building drones and data farms, not compassion." Ethan was speechless. Her insight cut deeper than any boardroom criticism. "You really are something else." "So are you," she said. "You just forgot who you were trying to help." They drove on, the storm fading behind them. At the diner, Lena devoured a stack of pancakes, like it was the first meal of her life. Ethan sat opposite her, quietly watching. For the first time in a long time, he felt something unexpected. Humility, gratitude, a strange hope. "So what's your plan?" he asked. She wiped syrup from her fingers. "Survive. Fix things. Maybe go back to school if the universe gets less cruel." He nodded slowly. "You're smart. Smarter than most people I work with." She looked at him, eyes narrowing. "I'm not looking for a handout." "Not offering one," he said. "But maybe you wouldn't mind a hand up?" She studied him for a long moment. "We'll see," she said. And just like that, a car breakdown on a rainy road turned into something more. Something real. The soft neon hum of the diner sign buzzed over Ethan's head as he pushed the glass door open. A bell chimed overhead, and the warmth inside rushed to greet them. The place was nearly empty, save for a lone trucker nursing a mug of black coffee and a teenager mopping the linoleum floor near the jukebox. Lena stepped in behind him, dripping water with each cautious step. Her eyes swept the room like she expected someone to tell her she didn't belong. Ethan motioned to a booth near the window. "Take a seat. Order whatever you want." Lena didn't move. "I told you, I'm not some pet project." Ethan sighed. "I'm not trying to fix you, Lena. I'm trying to thank you. You saved my ass back there. Let me feed you. No strings." Her eyes narrowed, as if she could sniff out strings even when they were invisible. After a moment, she slid into the booth and peeled off her wet coat. Her hoodie underneath clung to her frame, soaked through. Ethan sat across from her and waved down the waitress, a tired woman with a pencil behind her ear and a menu in each hand. 2 coffees, and a menu for her. She'll order in a second. The waitress nodded and left. Lena watched him carefully, her arms folded over her chest. "You don't seem like the kind of guy who gets stranded." Ethan leaned back, loosening his coat. "You don't seem like the kind of girl who camps in the woods and rewires cars in the rain." "Touché," she said. She reached for the menu and scanned it like it was a foreign language. "I used to love diners," she muttered. "Used to come with my dad after Little League games. He'd get me a burger and a milkshake." Ethan caught the wistful tone buried beneath her sarcasm. "What happened?" She set the menu down. "He died. Car accident. I was 15. Everything went sideways after that." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "Mom tried. Didn't work. I bounced around, couch to couch, shelter to shelter. Dropped out of college sophomore year when the loans caught up with me. Been fixing junk ever since." Ethan leaned in, surprised. "College? What were you studying?" "Mechanical engineering," she said without pride. "Top of my class." She shrugged. "Doesn't matter now." "It does," he said, more firmly than he meant to. "You're clearly brilliant." She raised an eyebrow. "Is this your thing? Picking up strays with potential?" "No," Ethan said, smiling despite himself. "I just think you deserve more than cold pavement and rainwater dinners." "You think life gives people what they deserve?" she asked, bitter now. "Because I've met a lot of bastards eating filet mignon." He didn't argue. Instead, he shifted the topic. So what's your dream? Don't say surviving. Say, if the world gave you a blank slate. Lena stared at him for a long beat, the defenses tightening around her shoulders. A mobile garage, she finally said. An old delivery truck outfitted with tools. I'd go around fixing stuff for people who can't afford repairs. Teach girls how to build things. Keep the streets moving. Keep people working. Ethan's eyes widened. That's incredible. You could scale that with the right support. She held up a hand. No, don't go there. I'm not a pitch deck. I'm not some startup waiting for seed money. I know, he said quickly, but it's a good idea. You should fight for it. And you, she countered. What's a billionaire doing stuck in the rain on a road he probably had built himself? He laughed softly, the sound weary, trying to do something meaningful for once. He rubbed his eyes. I built my empire on predictive algorithms and user data. I can tell you what brand of soap a stranger prefers after analyzing their clicks. I can build tools to mine consumer behavior like gold. But I pitched something different today, a nonprofit arm of my company. AI drones to locate and support homeless communities, real-time logistics, safety protocols, the works. And they laughed, called it soft, useless, said I was going soft because of guilt. Are you? She asked. He looked at her. Maybe, but I don't think guilt's the worst compass. Their coffees arrived. Lena dumped 4 sugars in hers and stirred violently. You still have your company, your buildings, your boardroom. You can shrug this off tomorrow. Ethan shook his head. I'm not so sure. The moment I left that meeting, I felt something crack. Like maybe I wasn't willing to play their game anymore. You want to play hero, she said, her tone softer now. But you don't know how. No, he admitted. But maybe you could teach me. She chuckled, but it wasn't mocking. You're not what I expected either. The waitress returned, pen ready. Lena hesitated for only a second before ordering eggs, toast, pancakes, and sausage. You're gonna bankrupt him, the waitress joked. He can afford it, Lena replied, without missing a beat. Ethan smiled. As the waitress left, Lena leaned forward. So what now? You drive me back to the shelter? Drop me off and go back to your skyscraper. Ethan hesitated. What if I offered something else? A job. Nothing fancy. Just logistics. You know systems. You know machines. You could help build something better. She narrowed her eyes. Why me? Because I trust you, he said. And I don't trust a lot of people anymore. She seemed to study him again, as if trying to see through his words. Finally, she looked down at her coffee. Let's eat first, she said. Then we'll see. They fell into a quiet rhythm, steam rising from their mugs, the outside world forgotten for a while. Neither of them noticed the waitress watching from the counter, quietly recognizing the strange energy between them. Something real, something fragile, and maybe, just maybe, something just beginning. Ethan glanced at Lena as she stared out the window, her hands buried in the pockets of her coat. She hadn't said much after finishing her pancakes, just sipped her coffee, and watched him like she was waiting for the catch. He cleared his throat. Look, he began, cautious. There's a vacancy. One night. Clean bed. Hot shower. You shouldn't be sleeping in the woods after a storm like that. Lena turned to him slowly, suspicion immediately flaring in her eyes. You're kidding, right? He blinked. No, I'm serious. I'll cover it. No expectations. Just thought. No expectations, she snapped, voice low but sharp. You think I haven't heard that before? A man in a fancy coat offers a bed, says there's no catch, and the next thing you know, it's hands and silence or a locked door. Ethan raised both palms. Whoa. No, it's not like that. I'm not. What? She interrupted, eyes narrowing. Not like them? You don't have to be. You've still got the money, the car, the power. And now you're offering me a room, like I'm supposed to be grateful for your generosity. Lena, he said carefully, I'm offering you a place to sleep because I watched you inhale your food like you hadn't eaten in days, because you patched my car in the rain with a tin wrapper, and because you deserve more than sleeping under a tarp tonight. That's it. Just the room. You don't owe me anything. She watched him, tense and still. Her jaw was clenched, eyes flicking between him and the sign. "I don't take charity," she said finally. "It's not charity," he replied. "It's respect. It's what you'd offer someone who helped you, who opened your eyes when you didn't know they needed opening." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card key he'd already gotten from the front desk, placing it gently on the dashboard between them. "It's room 4, he said, voice soft. "I'll be in the car. If you decide to take it, it's yours for the night. No strings. No catch." Then he stepped out and leaned against the hood, rain misting down on his hair, watching nothing, saying nothing, letting her make the choice. Inside the car, Lena stared at the card. Her fingers twitched. Her body ached from days of cold, from nights curled on concrete, from every moment spent pretending she didn't care. She looked at Ethan through the windshield, so still, so strangely quiet, and felt the coil of tension in her chest start to loosen. Slowly, as if each movement required a decision, she opened the door, stepped out, took the key, and walked toward room 4. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched her disappear behind the door and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Inside the room, Lena locked the door with both bolts and stood against it, heart pounding. The room was clean enough. A double bed, a cracked mirror, a yellowed lamp. But it was warm, dry, safe. She dropped her bag on the chair and peeled off her wet layers piece by piece, tossing her coat over the sink counter. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Hollow eyes, gaunt cheeks, a body that had shrunk in places from hunger, hardened in others from survival. She turned on the faucet, warm water flowing in shaky pipes, and splashed her face, gasping as heat touched her skin. After a quick shower, she wrapped herself in one of the stiff motel towels and curled up on the edge of the bed, the scratchy blanket pulled tight around her. Sleep didn't come easily. She stared at the ceiling, blinking slowly, mind playing old reels, her father's laugh at the wheel of their truck, her first blueprint sketched on notebook paper, the eviction notice tacked to the apartment door after he died, her mother's tears, the foster homes, the stolen backpack, the first night she slept under an overpass. It wasn't the fear that kept her up. It was the echo of who she used to be, haunting every second she let herself feel safe. Down in the car, Ethan dozed in the driver's seat, arms crossed over his chest. He hadn't meant to fall asleep, but exhaustion dragged him under. In his dream, he was in a boardroom again, facing men in suits who all wore the same face. They laughed as the city outside burned, as drones hovered over makeshift tents, as his idea turned into a product, his product into a weapon. He woke with a start, cold sweat on his neck. He looked up at the motel door, still shut, still safe. That was all he wanted, for her to feel safe. Morning arrived with a pale sky and a quiet that didn't feel real. Lena stepped out of the motel room, wearing her patched coat again, damp hair tied back, eyes tired but focused. Ethan opened the car door as she approached. "You sleep okay?" he asked. "Better than usual," she admitted. No bugs. Ethan hadn't gone back to work. He had canceled meetings, ignored emails, even sent his assistant home with a vague explanation. Every day since she vanished, he had searched shelters, bus stops, underground stations, anywhere she might disappear into. And every night, he came up empty. Until now. He parked 2 blocks from a downtown soup kitchen. A friend from city services had mentioned a girl matching Lena's description, helping unload supplies. Ethan stepped out, adjusting his jacket as he walked past people lined along the sidewalk, some wrapped in blankets, others in oversized coats, all carrying invisible stories. The smell of old coffee and damp cardboard clung to the air. Inside the shelter's side gate, he spotted her. Lena was crouched beside a stack of produce boxes, arguing with a volunteer about how to stack the crates without crushing the softer vegetables. Her voice was steady, clipped, commanding. Ethan stood still for a second, absorbing the sight of her in motion, focused, sharp, completely in her element. Then he stepped forward. "You always show up places and start fixing systems?" Lena turned, startled. Her mouth opened, then closed. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and stood upright. "You found me." "Not easy," Ethan said. "You don't leave much of a trail." That's the point, she replied. How did you help someone who knew someone who owed me a favor, he said, keeping his tone casual. City's smaller than it looks when you stop trying to own all of it. Lena folded her arms. So what now? You checking to see if I spent your goodwill wisely? Seeing if I'm still street material? No, Ethan said, meeting her gaze. I'm here to offer you something. Something real. She scoffed. The job again? Yes, he said, but this time with details. Transparency. Terms. Lena arched an eyebrow. You sure about that? Last I checked, your board didn't love your bleeding heart. Ethan gave a small laugh. They still don't, but I've been rethinking a few things. Starting with who I trust to build something that matters. He handed her a folded piece of paper. She took it cautiously, unfolded it, and read in silence. It was a job offer, but not in the tech labs. It was for a new pilot initiative called CORE, Community Outreach Resource Engine. A skunkworks team built to research, design, and deploy mobile aid units equipped to bring repair tools, first aid, and basic tech services to underserved neighborhoods. You wrote this, she asked quietly. With you in mind, he said. Logistics coordinator. You'd oversee resource distribution, team planning, vehicle outfitting. Your dream in beta form. Lena stared at the paper like it might explode. This isn't a job, she said slowly. It's a test. A PR stunt. It's not, Ethan said firmly. No press. No cameras. This stays quiet. If it works, we build from it. If not, we learn. She hesitated. And I'm not your redemption arc. You're my partner in something better, he said. That's it. She looked up, the paper crinkling slightly in her grip. I want terms in writing. I want clear pay. I want autonomy. If this turns into a charity badge or some kind of savior fantasy, I walk. Ethan nodded. Deal. And I work off-site, she added. No polished hours. No glass walls. I want a garage or a warehouse. We have one, he said, and used. You'll have keys by Monday. For a long moment, Lena didn't speak. She just stared at him, and he could feel the weight of her trust, how rarely she gave it, how hard it was for her to believe in sincerity. Finally, she folded the paper again and slid it into her pocket. I'll think about it, she said. But I'm not saying yes because you're rich or because you're trying to feel better about the world. I know, Ethan said. You'll say yes if it feels right, and I'll make sure it does. He turned to leave, giving her space, but she stopped him with one last question. Why me? He paused, then looked over his shoulder. Because when everyone else saw a broken car and a girl with dirty hands, I saw someone smarter than half my board and more honest than anyone I know. And I've learned that building anything real starts with people who don't fake it. She didn't reply. She just watched him go. Back at his office that afternoon, Ethan finally stepped into his boardroom for the first time in days. His assistant, Claire, stood outside with a tablet full of unread memos. You've been off the grid, she said. There are rumors. Let them circulate, he replied. We're launching something new. Claire raised an eyebrow. With who? Someone unexpected, he said. She followed him inside, reading over the core proposal with a frown. You're putting a homeless girl with no formal business background in charge of logistics? Ethan looked at her. Yes. That's going to scare investors, she warned. Good, he said. They should be scared of their own blind spots. You're risking a lot, she said. I know, Ethan replied. But for once, it feels like the right risk. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the high-rise windows, Lena stood back at the soup kitchen, paper still in her pocket, watching trucks unload pallets of goods. She worked 12 hours a day without complaint, sleeves rolled to her elbows, fingers permanently smudged with grease and ink. She ran meetings with military precision, coordinated material drops with local shelters, and adapted supply runs based on real-time neighborhood feedback. What she lacked in traditional credentials, she made up for in grit and raw intelligence. But outside her walls, the buzz began to grow, and not the good kind. On the top floors of Ethan's polished headquarters, where glass reflected the city skyline and lattes came with embossed logos, whispers started to circulate. It started with side comments in elevators. Did you see her? The one running the warehouse. She looks like she came straight from the street. Did Ethan lose a bet or something? The startup world Ethan had built thrived on polished resumes, Ivy League bravado, and LinkedIn connections forged over craft cocktails. Lena's arrival had disrupted that delicate image, and it didn't sit well with those who had always measured value by pedigree. Claire, Ethan's assistant, who had once backed him through 4 product launches and 2 scandals, grew increasingly uneasy. She confronted him in his office one morning, her tone clipped. "Ethan, we need to talk about Lena." He looked up from his laptop, weary. "What about her?" "She's rough," Claire said. "People are starting to ask questions. She doesn't act like one of us. She doesn't fit the culture." Ethan leaned back slowly. "The culture that's failed to reach anyone outside this building? The one that says if you don't wear a blazer or have a code name, you're unqualified." Claire crossed her arms. "She makes people uncomfortable." "Good," Ethan said. "Comfort hasn't gotten us anywhere." Claire's lips thinned. "You're risking your credibility." "Then maybe it was time someone did," he said, voice colder now. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, Lena was beginning to feel the heat from a different direction. Supply drivers started showing up late. Requests from the main office went unanswered. A junior executive assigned to coordinate fleet logistics made passive-aggressive comments in front of her volunteers. "I'm surprised you know how to read these forms," he said once, waving a delivery manifest. Lena didn't blink. "I read just fine," she said. "Want me to explain where you went wrong in Section B?" The snickers from nearby workers shut him up, but Lena could feel the walls tightening. She didn't need polished office politics to know when she was being frozen out. That evening, after everyone had cleared out, she stayed late reorganizing the power tool inventory. The door creaked open, and Ethan stepped inside, a folder under one arm, eyes scanning the room until they found her. "You should go home," he said gently. "I hear you've been working yourself into the floor." "Funny," Lena said without turning. "I thought I wasn't one of you. Thought I didn't belong." Ethan's face tightened. "What happened?" She stood and faced him, arms folded. "You put me in charge, but you didn't protect me. You gave me power without the shield. Now I'm getting the fallout, and everyone else thinks I'm here because you pity me, not because I earned it." He stepped closer. "I don't pity you." "I know that," she said. "But they don't. And your silence tells them they're right." Ethan's hands balled into fists. "What do you want me to do, Lena? Give a speech? Fire everyone who whispers?" "No," she said. "I want you to say, 'I belong,' out loud, where it matters." Ethan looked at her for a long time, the warehouse shadows stretching between them. "Then come with me tomorrow," he said. 10 a.m. full team briefing. I want them to hear it from both of us." The next morning, Lena stood beside Ethan in the executive boardroom, surrounded by men and women in business attire who barely looked at her. Ethan stood before the wall-sized display screen and cleared his throat. "We're expanding the pilot," he began. 2 more mobile units, new zones, new metrics. And Lena is leading the operations across the board. She's not an advisor. She's not a case study. She's my partner in this. Anyone who has a problem with that can meet with HR or meet the door." Murmurs spread across the room. Claire blinked but said nothing. Lena stood tall beside him, arms at her sides, gaze level. She didn't need to smile. She didn't need to prove anything. She was exactly where she belonged. Afterward, as they walked down the hall, Ethan turned to her. "That enough, Shield?" She nodded once. "For now." They stopped outside the elevator, the silence full of something weightier than tension. "I'm not here because of you," she said. "But I stayed because of you." "Good," he said. "Because I'm not building this without you." The elevator doors opened, but neither moved. "People like me," she said, "don't get this chance. Not without being turned into mascots or martyrs." "You're neither," Ethan said. "You're the reason it might work." She stepped into the elevator. "Then let's make it work." As the doors closed, Ethan stood alone in the hallway, watching his reflection in the glass wall. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about his investors or his valuation. He was thinking about impact, and about the woman who'd become the only voice he trusted when everything else started to crack. crystal chandeliers, flute glasses, whispered alliances over wine. That was a language she never learned. That night, she sat on the edge of her cot in the back room of the warehouse, the invitation finally open in her lap. The RSVP card gleamed under the single bulb overhead. She hadn't owned a dress in years. She hadn't walked into a room full of polished strangers since her scholarship dinner back in college, just months before everything fell apart. But Ethan had asked, and part of her, a part she didn't like to admit existed, wanted to be there, wanted to be seen, not as a token, not as a charity case, but as a leader, as someone who mattered. The gala was held in the ballroom of the Stratford Hotel, a tower of glass and marble, where doormen wore tailored uniforms and cars were valeted without question. Lena arrived in a second-hand black dress she found at a thrift store 3 neighborhoods over. Her boots were polished, her hair tied back simply, her makeup minimal. She looked clean, focused like herself. But as she stepped into the glittering atrium, she immediately felt wrong. Too plain, too sharp around the edges. The women around her floated in gowns that shimmered under the chandeliers. Men clinked glasses, laughed too loudly, adjusted cufflinks worth more than her entire wardrobe. She found Ethan near the bar, dressed in a dark tailored suit, collar unbuttoned, drink in hand. His eyes lit up the second he saw her, and he crossed the room without hesitation. "You came," he said, voice low, warm. "I wasn't sure." "Neither was I," she said. "But I figured someone should keep you from choking on caviar." He laughed. "Fair point. You look amazing." "Don't lie," she said. "But thanks." They stood side by side for a moment, watching the crowd ripple and pulse. Ethan leaned close. "You want to make an exit? We can ditch this for tacos and quiet." "Not yet," she said. "Let them see I don't scare that easy." He nodded, proud. But the moment shattered minutes later when a board member named Grant, 50, smug, and drunk on aged scotch, cornered Lena near the silent auction table. "So," he slurred, glancing at her dress, "this is the girl who's got Ethan spending money on scrap vans and outreach dreams." Lena didn't flinch. "That's right. And we've cut transport inefficiencies by 30% since launch." Grant smiled without warmth. "Must be nice, having his attention. Bet you've never had doors open like this before." Her spine straightened. "Excuse me." "Oh, come on," he said, leaning closer. Pretty girl from nowhere shows up. Suddenly she's the golden girl. You two spending a lot of late nights planning logistics. Before she could reply, Ethan's voice sliced through the air. "Step away from her, Grant." Grant blinked, turned. "Ethan, hey, I was just disrespecting someone you don't deserve to speak to," Ethan snapped. The crowd quieted. "Lena's here because she's the reason this initiative is working. She's smarter than every analyst on your team and twice as brave. And if I ever hear you talk to her like that again, you'll be investing from the outside." Murmurs rose like wind through leaves. Grant backed away, face flushed, and disappeared into the crowd. Lena stood frozen, every muscle taut, breath shallow. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did," Ethan replied. He crossed a line. "That's not the point," she said, voice cracking. "Now everyone thinks I needed saving." "You didn't," he said. "But I won't stand by and let anyone reduce you to a rumor." She turned away, needing air. He followed her out onto the balcony, where the city lights burned in sharp contrast against the sky. She gripped the railing, breathing in deep, trying to calm the riot inside her chest. "This is why I don't belong here," she said. "This world, your world, it doesn't want me. It wants the idea of me, until I make them uncomfortable." "They're wrong," Ethan said. "You belong wherever you want to be." "No," she whispered. "I belong where I don't have to explain myself, where I don't feel like I'm one mistake away from being thrown back to the street." Ethan stepped closer. "You're not going back. Not ever." She looked at him, then really looked, at the way his eyes searched hers, at the quiet fury still burning in his jaw, at the way his hand hovered like he wanted to touch her but didn't. "You care too much," she said. "And I don't know if that's because you see me or because you need to feel something good." "I see you," he said. "You scare me, Lena, because you're the only person who ever looked at me and didn't want anything. And now I think I want everything with you. and that terrifies me." She blinked, breath caught in her throat. Then, before she could stop herself, she stepped forward, her hand brushing his. The contact was electric, small but seismic. For a moment, they didn't move. Then she pulled back. "I can't," she said. "Not yet." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Take all the time you need." She nodded and walked back inside, heels echoing against marble, head high despite the storm behind her eyes. A blurry shot of him standing beside Lena on the gala balcony was the centerpiece. The caption read, "More than partners?" It got worse from there. Anonymous sources, references to her past. A line that read, "Insiders claim she once lived in a tent under 6th Street Bridge." Ethan slammed the tablet down on his desk, the screen cracking. "Who leaked this?" he demanded, looking up at Claire, who stood grim-faced near the door. "We're still tracing it," she said. "But the timing suggests it came from someone inside the board. Probably Grant." "Of course it was," Ethan muttered. He couldn't beat her straight, so he went around me. "It's everywhere," Claire said. Twitter, Reddit, even the finance blogs picked it up. They're calling her a grifter, saying you're compromised. Ethan paced. "We need a statement. Something neutral. Protect her without feeding the fire." "Ethan," Claire said softly, "have you talked to her yet?" He stopped pacing. "No, not yet." "You should," she said, "before she thinks this is your doing." He didn't respond. He grabbed his jacket and bolted from the office, mind racing, heart pounding. He drove faster than he should have, straight to the warehouse. But when he arrived, it was empty. The lights were off. The whiteboard was wiped clean. Her workstation was bare, nothing left, but a single torn post-it on the desk. On it, in her tight handwriting, were 3 words, "I don't belong." Ethan sat down in her chair, chest hollow. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number, one he had only recently convinced her to accept, a cheap prepaid device he'd bought her for core coordination. It rang twice, then straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. For the rest of the day, he searched. He checked shelters, soup kitchens, the back alleys she used to walk, the parks where she'd once admitted to sleeping near the benches. No one had seen her. It was as if she'd disappeared into the cracks again, leaving nothing but silence in her wake. Back at his apartment that night, Ethan stood on the rooftop balcony, phone clenched in his fist. The city stretched beneath him like a field of fireflies, glittering and uncaring. His mind replayed the last conversation they'd had, every word, every hesitation, every truth they had danced around. He had told her he saw her. He had promised she was safe. And now the world had shown her the opposite. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he drafted and redrafted a public statement, something sharp and human, something that didn't sound like a PR stunt. He finally posted it at 4:12 a.m. It read, "Lena isn't a story. She's not a headline or a symbol. She's the mind behind the success of Core and the strongest person I know. If you want to know what integrity looks like, look at her. If you want gossip, look elsewhere." It went viral in minutes. But by sunrise, there was still no sign of her. Lena, meanwhile, was sitting in the corner booth of an all-night laundromat 2 neighborhoods away, wrapped in her old coat, hood up, watching the news report scroll across the muted TV bolted to the wall. Her face was plastered on the screen, pixelated and invasive. Her name was being dragged through dirt by people who didn't know her, who had never spoken to her, who had only seen the photos and drawn their own conclusions. She hated the way they said her name like it was an accessory to someone else's scandal. She hated that everything Ethan had promised, respect, privacy, partnership, had been stripped away the moment the cameras caught wind of her. She didn't blame him, not entirely, but she also couldn't face him. Not when every look now might be suspicion. Not when her identity had been turned into a narrative she couldn't control. She folded her arms on the table, head resting against them, eyes shut tight. Her phone buzzed once, then again, then 5 more times. She didn't look. She couldn't. Later that day, Ethan stood in the warehouse again, trying to piece together what she had left behind. He checked the supply logs, the plans, the message board still up in the back. Everything she touched bore traces of her mind. Precise, efficient, quietly brilliant. But the person behind the genius was gone, vanished into the shadows she'd worked so hard to escape. And he had no idea how to bring her back. Warning: Core was operational, but without her, it ran like a machine with no fuel, efficient but hollow. Ethan spent his days in shelters, his nights in alleyways, following the trail of a woman who knew how to disappear better than most people knew how to live. He spoke with shelter coordinators who remembered her voice, who recalled her blunt honesty and sharp jokes. He gave cash tips to street vendors who might have seen her pass. He scanned faces in bus stations, checked abandoned buildings where the homeless sought refuge after dark. Nothing. Just a string of quiet nods, vague leads, and locked doors. Until a social worker named Marta at the Crescent Women's Outreach paused mid-conversation and said, "Wait, Lena? Yeah, she used to come here sometimes. Quiet girl. Smart. She used to sketch while she waited for food." Ethan's heart kicked. Sketch? Do you know if she left anything behind? Marta scratched her head, then called over a volunteer. Check the storage files. I think she had a locker in that pay-by-month unit over on Larchmont. Unit E17, maybe. Ethan was there within the hour, bypassing red tape with a donation that made the manager's eyes widen. The unit was a 6x8 metal coffin, the kind of place dreams went to suffocate. He cracked the padlock and stepped inside, breathing stale dust and faint traces of old perfume. Inside were 3 milk crates filled with books, tools, a soldering kit, and a small battered notebook duct-taped at the spine. His hands trembled as he opened it. Page after page of diagrams, sketches, and notes filled the journal. Mobile unit designs, power grid hacks, notes on city logistics, and bits of personal reflections buried between technical thoughts. One entry read, "People think surviving means being strong. It doesn't. It means knowing what to let go of before it eats you." Another, "If I ever build my mobile garage, I'm calling it the Fix. Not for things. For people. For me." Ethan sat on the cold concrete floor, flipping through each page like it was oxygen. He found a faded photograph tucked in back. Lena, maybe 17, standing beside a beat-up truck, grease on her cheeks, smiling like she didn't yet know what the world could take. He pressed the photo to his chest, eyes burning. "Where are you?" he whispered. The next morning, he met with Marta again. "Do you know where she might go?" he asked. "Somewhere familiar, somewhere safe." Marta thought for a while. "She used to talk about this little garage near the old rail yard," she said. "She worked there briefly, said it felt like home." Ethan drove out immediately. The garage had been shut down years ago, windows boarded, weeds overtaking the lot. But when he broke the lock and stepped inside, he found signs someone had been there. Blankets in the corner, an empty soup can, and a half-finished schematic drawn in chalk on the concrete floor. "You brilliant ghost," he muttered. He waited there until dusk, but she never came. Still, he felt her presence in the silence, in the scent of oil and rust, in the careful lines on the floor. That night, Ethan sat in the car outside the garage, reading through her journal again, letting her voice become real in his ears. He hadn't just lost a partner. He'd lost something he hadn't dared name yet. Not just because he loved her, but because she never asked him to. Because she carried her pain like armor and never once made him responsible for healing it. He returned to the city the next day with a new plan. He posted a message, not through press or PR, but handwritten and tacked to walls, utility poles, shelter bulletin boards. The note read, "Lena, if you see this, come home. Not the office, not the project. Just back to where it's safe. I'm not here to fix you. I just miss you." He signed it with a small gear symbol, one she always doodled beside her name. Days passed. Still nothing. He was walking near the river underpass late one night when he heard someone say, "Hey, aren't you the guy from that thing?" Ethan turned. A girl in a knit cap stared at him from a makeshift camp. "You looking for that mechanic girl?" "Yes," he said quickly. "Lena." The girl nodded slowly. "She came through here. Left 2 nights ago. Said she was going back to the place with the light in the roof." "What place?" She shrugged. "Didn't say. Just said she used to sit there and pretend the sun was for her." Ethan racked his brain, flipping through every story Lena had told, every hint she dropped. Then it hit him, the old observatory. She once mentioned she used to sneak into the Griffith Observatory before sunrise, climb to the roof, and pretend she was alone on a different planet. He drove there at once, heart thundering. It was nearly dawn. The building was closed, the grounds quiet. He climbed around the back, found the old service ladder she described, and pulled himself up. At the top, against the lightning sky, she sat cross-legged on the roof, watching the city yawn beneath them. Her back was straight, her silhouette sharp against the horizon. She didn't turn when he approached. "You found me," she said. "I never stopped looking," he replied. "You shouldn't have had to." "I wanted to," he said, "because I needed you to know something." She turned then, eyes shadowed but steady. "What?" "That I'm not here to rescue you. I'm here because without you, I forgot how to care about anything real." She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, "I saw your note. Did it help?" "Maybe," she whispered, "but this helped more." She reached into her coat and handed him her journal. "This was all I had. Now it's yours. If I leave again, I want you to keep building." The day of the core launch began with a thick, overcast sky. Gray clouds layered like old bruises over downtown Los Angeles. The air held the weight of something imminent, not just a storm, but a change. One that vibrated in Ethan's bones as he stood on the tarmac outside the newly repurposed garage. The centerpiece of the event stood gleaming behind him. Core's first fully outfitted mobile outreach van, now christened the Fix, as per Lena's design and request. The name was stenciled in industrial orange on the matte charcoal side of the van, understated but defiant. News cameras flashed as press gathered near the makeshift podium. Investors muttered behind their folded arms, and skeptical corporate staff kept a polite distance, all while pretending not to stare at the woman standing beside Ethan. Lena, dressed in a dark utility jacket, her boots scuffed, her expression neutral but unreadable. She looked like a mechanic preparing for a war zone, not a photo op. She hadn't spoken much since they left the observatory days ago, choosing instead to throw herself into work, tuning the van, updating routes, teaching field volunteers how to use portable generators and emergency toolkits. The journal he kept close now lived in the drawer of his desk, every page memorized. He hadn't asked her to move in. He hadn't asked her anything. He'd simply given her space, and she, in turn, hadn't left. "They're all watching me," she muttered, eyes on the press line. "They're waiting for me to mess up." "Then make them wait forever," Ethan said. "You built this. They're just late to the truth." She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased by an inch. Claire appeared beside them, tablet in hand, voice low. 10 minutes until live stream. And we've got a problem." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Power core on the demo unit isn't responding," Claire said. "No uplink. Diagnostics frozen. We can't show the automation." "How long to fix it?" "Too late," Claire replied. "The press will catch it." "Let me see it," Lena said. Ethan and Claire both turned. "You sure?" Ethan asked. "You've got 10 minutes. "I only need 5, she said, already moving. They followed her to the van's tech hatch, where a junior tech hovered nervously beside a half-disassembled interface panel. "I didn't touch anything," he stammered. "It just stopped." Lena crouched, pulled a pocket multi-tool from her jacket, and started tracing connections. She murmured under her breath, ignoring the growing circle of eyes around her. "Power routes are bleeding off through the backup node. Whoever installed the capacitor didn't isolate the ground." "Can we bypass it?" Ethan asked. "No," she said, "we fix it." With hands steady and decisive, she clipped 2 wires, twisted copper with a practiced flick, soldered a thin joint using a portable arc pen from her belt, and resealed the panel. The moment she flipped the switch, the unit hummed to life. A soft blue glow filled the van's center console, and the automated stabilizer lights blinked online. The junior tech exhaled in awe. Claire blinked. "You just rewired a faulty ground," Lena said, standing up. 10 years ago, I did this with coat hangers. This is luxury." Then she turned to Ethan. "You still want me up there?" "I want you leading this," he said. "Always." Minutes later, Lena stood behind the podium as cameras rolled and microphones extended. She cleared her throat once. "Hi," she began, voice steady despite the tension. I'm Lena. I'm not a founder or a CEO or someone you'll find on a magazine cover. I'm someone who slept on concrete, who's fixed cars for sandwiches, and who once dreamed of a machine that could reach people before they broke down. That's what CORE is. That's what the fix is. It's not charity. It's equity. And today, we stop talking about change and start driving it. Applause broke through the cautious crowd. Even the investors clapped, slow, uncertain, but real. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, heart full, watching her light up the space, not with flash, but with fire. After the press cleared and the van departed on its first deployment, Ethan found her alone in the garage, running diagnostics on a second vehicle. He walked up quietly. "That was incredible." "It was necessary," she replied, eyes on the screen. "You didn't have to fix the van yourself." "Yes, I did," she said. "They needed to see I belonged." "You've already proved that 100 times." "Maybe," she said, "but today I proved it to me." Silence stretched between them, long and full of something that had waited too long. Finally, he said, "I haven't told you what I should have." She looked up. "Then tell me." "I love you," he said. "Not because you helped me. Not because you're brilliant. Because you make me want to be honest. To be human. You make me remember why I started all this." Lena's breath hitched. She closed the laptop slowly and turned to him. "You really mean that?" "With everything I have," he said. She stepped closer, inches away. "Then don't ever ask me to be anything other than myself." "Never," he said. She kissed him, brief, fierce, and full of unspoken vows. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "We've still got a long road ahead." "Good," he replied. "That's the only road worth taking." And as the storm finally broke outside, rain tapping against the roof, they stood together in the heartbeat of the work they had built, ready to face whatever came next. The auditorium pulsed with anticipation as the lights dimmed and a hush settled over the hundreds of attendees seated in neat rows under the grand dome of the Innovation Summit Hall. Banners overhead fluttered slightly from the circulating air, reading "Solutions for Tomorrow" and "Equity Through Action." On stage stood a minimalist podium set against a massive screen displaying a single image: the CORE mobile unit, parked beneath a downtown mural, surrounded by children and volunteers, its doors open wide like a heartbeat. Ethan sat in the front row, his hands resting on his knees, a rare stillness in his posture as he looked up toward the stage. He wore no suit jacket, no tie, just an open-collared shirt and the faintest trace of awe in his eyes. This wasn't his moment. It never had been. This was hers. Lena walked out onto the stage with the same quiet confidence she had when fixing a faulty capacitor or navigating the politics of a broken system. She wore a simple black jacket over CORE's gray uniform tee, her dark jeans tucked into worn boots, a subtle nod to every version of herself that had existed before this moment. She didn't glance at the screen behind her. She didn't need to. She had lived it. Every mile, every call, every hand she'd held in the field when someone needed warmth more than words. She stepped up to the podium, cleared her throat once, and began. 6 months ago, I sat on the roof of a building I didn't belong in, watching the sun rise over a city that had tried to forget me. I'd walked away from a job I believed in, from people who believed in me, because I didn't trust the world to hold me without turning me into a spectacle. I didn't want to be a project. I wanted to be a person, and back then, I didn't think that was possible. She paused, letting the silence breathe. Her voice was steady, grounded, not in rehearsal, but in truth. I was wrong, not because the world changed overnight, but because I stopped waiting for permission to belong in it. I started building anyway. A few heads nodded. A few pens stopped scribbling. She continued. CORE wasn't my dream alone. It was a blueprint I sketched on the backs of receipts and notebook paper when I had no place to sleep. It was the solution I imagined when I watched systems fail people again and again. But dreaming didn't make it real. People did. Support did. And yes, so did love. A murmur spread across the room. She didn't flinch. The kind of love that doesn't try to fix you, that just sees you, that stands beside you when the world watches and whispers, that gives you a stage, then steps off of it. Her eyes flicked briefly to Ethan, and he held her gaze, his expression unreadable except for one undeniable truth: pride. She shifted her weight slightly, her tone deepening. In 6 months, CORE has deployed 14 mobile units across 3 states. We've restored power to over 900 low-income homes, repaired 1,200 critical systems, and distributed more than 40,000 emergency aid kits. But numbers aren't the story. People are. The single mother in Modesto who used our unit to fix her car's brakes so she could get to work. The high school senior in Phoenix who helped us build a solar pack and now wants to study engineering. The man in Skid Row who looked me in the eye and said, "This is the first time someone brought the help to me instead of expecting me to come begging for it." That's the story. That's what we build now. The applause came in ripples, then waves, but Lena didn't bask in it. She waited until it softened again, then said, "I'm not here to sell a product or pitch a startup. I'm here to say the future doesn't belong to the people who inherited power. It belongs to those who survived without it and still chose to build. And we're building. Every day, every mile, one fix at a time." She stepped back from the podium. No dramatic bow, no raised fists. Just a quiet nod of gratitude as she exited stage left, the spotlight behind her fading slowly into dark. Backstage, Ethan waited by the exit, a water bottle in hand, his heart thundering. She walked up to him and took it, her fingers brushing his. "You were perfect," he said softly. "I was real," she corrected. "That's better." They stood for a moment, the noise of the crowd echoing beyond the curtains. Two people who had never needed fanfare to recognize something good. "What happens next?" he asked. She looked at him. "We go back to work." He nodded. "Together." "Yes," she said. "But this time we build everything with open hands. No more saving. No more hiding. Just doing." "And us?" he asked, quieter now. "Are we doing this too?" She took his hand and squeezed it. "We already are." Outside the summit hall, reporters waited with cameras and questions, but Lena walked through them like they were ghosts. Her team was waiting. The van's engine was running. There were streets to map, needs to answer, stories to hear. She climbed into the passenger seat, Ethan sliding in beside her, and the city opened wide before them, messy, beautiful, unfinished. Just like them, just like the work. But this time, she wasn't afraid of being seen. She wasn't afraid of being written about, speculated over, or misunderstood. Because now the only story that mattered was the one they wrote together, with grease on their hands and fire in their chests. No longer a girl on the street or a man in a tower, but builders of something real. Something that would outlast the headlines. Something worth every moment it took to earn. The end. If you enjoyed this powerful story of transformation, resilience, and unexpected love, don't forget to like the story and subscribe for more gripping tales that bring emotion and meaning to life. What did you think of Lena and Ethan's journey? Which moment hit you the hardest? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Let's talk about how stories like these reflect real struggles and real hope. Your feedback makes all the difference.